Hello, and welcome to Notion 101. In this course, we'll walk you through everything you need to know to get started using Notion. In our Academy courses, we do tutorials, talk about best practices, and create real tools from scratch that you can start using with your team. Here, we'll go from the basics, like adding a new page, and move through creating databases and keeping your workspace organized. By the end of this course, you should feel comfortable creating any documentation in Notion and will be ready to take on lightweight project management use cases. Most of the examples that we cover in this course have to do with using Notion collaboratively. But if you're not doing that yet, there will still be plenty to learn. And who knows? It might just inspire you to invite some friends into your workspace. So if you're like me, you probably have 15 tabs open right now. One for email, one for Slack, one for Docs. But have you ever thought about where these work tools came from or why we have so many of them? Learning Notion isn't solely about learning to use yet another tool. Our mission at Notion is to make software toolmaking ubiquitous. But what does that mean exactly? We believe that if every business and person can tailor software to their problems, that the world as a whole will be better at solving its problems. That means that not only are our product and engineering teams working to create a really awesome and hyper-flexible product, but that our whole company is invested in our users and our community, that's you, to teach the underlying principles of software development. We hope that this empowers you to build the kinds of tools that you need to do your work better. Much like our software, this course is broken up in 2 blocks. Each block is made up of 3 videos. 2 will deep dive into features and how to use them.
Databases are one of the most powerful Notion features.
While the 3rd will be a walkthrough on how to use the features in a practical way for your team. In our 101 course, we'll walk through these sequentially, so you'll never be using a feature that you haven't seen before unless we explain it first. But if you're interested in deep diving into a specific concept, check out some of our other Academy courses. By the end of this 101 course, you will have created an SOP document, an onboarding manual for new hires, a way to track company-wide meeting notes, and an organizational structure for company docs. For the best experience in this course, you should make sure you're signed up for Notion and have it open and ready to build alongside us. We'll go over everything, but if you're ever stuck, Help Center articles linked on the body of each page will go into even greater detail and can help keep you moving. I am so excited to be on this journey with you. So with that, let's jump in. In this lesson, we'll learn how to write and transform text in Notion using the block handle, and then apply that knowledge to create a simple, personal task list. If you've played around in Notion at all, you've encountered the idea of blocks and pages, whether you realized it or not. You've consumed content on a page if you saw something that looked like this. In this video, we'll create a page and analyze a few text-based Notion pages to get a better understanding of document creation in Notion. The 3 basic ideas we'll talk about in this lesson are creating a private page, adding text, and changing block types and styling. So to get started, let's create a page. We'll get into the sidebar in greater detail later on, but we can start here in our private section. Pages in here aren't shared with other members in your workspace, so it's a good place to learn on your own. To create a page, simply click on the plus sign next to the word private. This is your canvas for everything you'll accomplish in Notion, and I'm excited for the 2 of you to get more acquainted. To add text in Notion, you can start typing or paste text in. See how when you start typing, the features fade away? That's so you can focus on getting your thoughts on the page. I'm going to paste in some text from a fictitious user research session that we can transform using Notion's block menu. With just a few button clicks, we'll transform this text into this formatted page. The first thing I want to do here is create sections using headings. Under the hood, every piece of text in Notion is a block that can be formatted in a bunch of different ways. The key to changing a block's type lives in this 6-dot menu to the left of the text. Here we'll select Turn Into, and this gives us a list of options, including headings. I'll just click here, and my first heading is transformed. We can also format through Markdown using the pound sign and using the keyboard shortcut /turn with the name of our block. In this case, Heading 1. You may have also noticed a couple of options for displaying the content itself. I could use to-do lists, bullet points, numbers, toggles, or any of the many options available to me here. I can highlight multiple rows of text and turn them into a callout, bullet points, or to-do lists in the case of my action items. Another fun thing we can do with the block handle is move blocks around. Say one action item was more important than another, I could just drag it up in this list and drop it here. Similarly, if I wanted columns like there were in our example, I could drag this block to the right of another. That light blue line shows where the block is headed, and when I release my mouse, it will drop right in that spot. Now that we know all about the block handle and text editing in Notion, we're ready to review and build out a practical, lightweight to-do template. To start, you can use the plus sign to add a page into the private section of your workspace. Again, no worries if the sidebar as a whole is a little confusing right now, we'll get there soon. That should pull up a blank page that looks like this, and we can start adding content. Our end product is going to look something like this. Here, we'll want to add 3 columns with level 2 headings: to do, doing, and done. To create those, I'll just type out the text and then use the block handle to turn them into headings. There's other ways to do this too, of course, Markdown or the /turn command, depending on your preference. Under each section, we can go ahead and add our to-do list items. I'll add research personas, pick up dry cleaning, and request PTO for family vacation into my to-do list. Then I can simply drag blocks into the doing column while they're in progress, and satisfactorily check them off and move them to the done column when complete. The only other thing we're missing from the template here is some color, which, you guessed it, I can add with the block handle. I'll highlight these in red, yellow, and green, create some columns, and there we have it. Go ahead and add a new page on your own before moving on. Add some text and change the colors. In this video, we'll explain the idea of a block and identify the 6 block categories that exist in Notion. We'll do this by creating a mission, vision, and values page for Acme Inc. Most software uses a few core concepts: writing, commenting, data structure. Still, where we sit now, you can't really manipulate these features. Instead, we duct tape things together. We have an email where we copy and paste, we have countless open tabs, and you rinse and repeat for most tools on the market. Notion originated with this idea of patterns. Why not give people these common elements directly, allowing them to build their own perfect tools? In a way, it's like Lego blocks. With just a couple of block sizes and colors, people can create massively incredible toys and statues. So why can't the same be true of software? To solve this, we use our own version of blocks. Blocks are the basic unit of construction in Notion. Everything that you add to a page is a block. Text is contained in a block, this header is a block, and so is this image. So let's look at a constructed Notion page. There are 12 different blocks on this page, including 7 different block types. Each piece of text without a line break is a block, including each of these bullet points. The title's not a block, but that's a technicality we can get to later. There are over 500 block types in Notion, and you can read all about those in our Help Center. But for the purposes of this lesson, you should understand that there are 6 basic block categories. The first is text blocks. This includes pages, normal text, headings, bullet points, toggles, to-do lists, callouts, and quotes. The second is inline blocks. If you're familiar with HTML, this is actually the exact vocabulary that is used there. These blocks are basically things that live within another block, like mentions or date objects. The third is media blocks, and as the name suggests, media blocks include images, video, and audio uploads, all of which can be played right inside of Notion. Next is embed blocks. These are anything that get pulled in from another website, like a map, a YouTube video, or a design. These are one of the most unique features in Notion, and they make up most of the 500 block types that we offer. We'll spend several lessons getting to know database blocks, but for now, just know that they exist and they look like these tables and boards. There's also advanced blocks, which are some more complex features specific to Notion that we won't really get into in this video, but they include things like synced blocks and table of contents. All right, with all of that context, let's get into some exploration. To explore block types, you can use the / command or hit the plus sign here. Let's go ahead and construct a document using several block types. To keep it simple, we'll create a mission, vision, and values page for Acme Inc. First, let's give our page a title, in this case simply mission, vision, and values, and then select an icon. Next, let's add the mission, vision, and value statements as text. Text is a default block type in Notion, so we don't need to add it, we just start typing. To add some style and emphasis, we can add an image by again using the plus sign or the / command. That will bring up a gray box that looks like this, and we can either upload, add a link, or select an image from Unsplash. I'll do the Unsplash option here and just grab an image of a person at a computer, but you could obviously do something that resonates with you and your org. Just like we did in the last lesson, we can go ahead and rearrange columns using the drag and drop 6-dot menu. And as you can see, we could continue to add blocks and style here with very little restriction. Every other lesson you take here will cover how blocks can be combined to create new pages and display new information. Just like Lego blocks, these will create everything that you could possibly consider building in Notion. To use this knowledge on your own, go ahead and edit the page that you created in the last video to include some media block types. Welcome to our first project walkthrough. In these lessons, we'll work through some real-life work scenarios start to finish to apply the skills that we just learned in a more specific context. As usual, there's a template so you can duplicate our end product into your workspace and get to customizing more quickly. For today's project, we'll put ourselves in the shoes of a business leader who is rolling out a new process to their team. In this case, the process is a new way of doing performance reviews, but the work we'll do here could apply to any kind of standard operating procedure that you needed to put in place for your team. For today's case, instead of your old ad hoc system of reviews with promotions available only in December, you'll be doing 2 review cycles every 6 months using a new HR platform called Reviewer. Your employees need to know how to access the platform, as well as what's expected from them over the coming weeks. Creating a living document in Notion that exists alongside the rest of your company information and that can be updated as needed means that this important document won't get lost in the bottom of people's inboxes and become outdated over time. To get started, we'll add a page to the private section of our sidebar. We'll get into sharing settings in much more detail later, but for now, just remember that anything you add here won't show up in your Team Spaces section or in Collaborators shared sections until you intentionally move or share it. For that reason, it's a great space to draft content and iterate on your own ideas. To start our SOP, we'll build out the document structure, starting with the best part, adding a title, and picking our emoji. I'll go ahead and title this Acme Performance Review Process, and then we can select an emoji. I like this flag here, but you can always choose something that feels aligned to your internal brand, whether that's an emoji, uploaded image, or an icon. Now getting to the meat of it. We'll add text by typing, starting with the title heading and filling out the doc with a few important H2s and H3s. You can use Markdown to add that text structure here, so we'll do a quick overview section as H1, add purpose, context, and terminology headings as H2, and then we'll include another H1 with the review process and an H2 for the schedule. Then we can start to fill in specific details about the rollout. So I'll add everything that I just typed about this being an important new procedure, fill in a little bit of the purpose, and go ahead and add a simple table that explains what's happening for the weeks and days leading up to the new performance reviews. If I had any additional documents, like a Loom video or a Typeform survey, I'd want to embed those here as well. This is another advantage of using Notion over a more traditional note-taking app. All of these block types means that information stays on the page rather than sending readers out to lots of different apps. Finally, I'll create a toggle with references like our company's total rewards philosophy, leveling framework, and whatever else I wanted to add. And there you have it. This is a structured document full of helpful blocks that will make the rollout to your team as smooth as possible.
In this video, we're going to dive deeper into navigating your workspace, joining team spaces, and customizing your sidebar. As you now know, every block in Notion must live on a page. Whether it's as simple as text for an email or as complex as a company's operating system, it's on a page. Pages can be housed within team spaces on your sidebar or inside of another page. And in case you're thinking, didn't someone say everything is a block? Don't worry, pages are a type of block too. When a member joins a workspace, they'll be added to any number of default team spaces. In this workspace, the general team space has 6 distinct top-level pages. Each of these can hold any number of nested subpages as well. You can click the All Team Spaces button to browse and join all available team spaces in your workspace. Any team space you join will show up in your sidebar, and you'll have access to the pages within it. Your organization may also have closed or private team spaces that require an invitation to join. To tell where a page lives, the team space and the parent pages it descends from, you can look to the breadcrumb in the top left. This shows all of the pages your current page is descended from, and you can click the ellipses to view more. Combined with the Share menu in the top right, which tells you who can access a page and in what way, you'll get a full picture of a page's sharing settings. Let's talk about some best practices in Notion. We recommend keeping your sidebar selective. Think of it like your computer desktop. This is a lot easier to navigate than this. The same is true of your sidebar. Typically, we recommend having a company operating systems knowledge base, and then a team space for each major function within your team, like marketing, sales, engineering, design, and so on, though there are a few different strategies you can implement. Within these top-level pages, you can use subpages to further organize content and workflows. As an example, let's navigate through the layers of our Acme workspace. In the sidebar, we find the team space for marketing. Within marketing, there are top-level pages for different functions. Within those pages, like content marketing, we find even more subpages with relevant resources. If we were interested in brand content, we could click into this page, and so on. Since a page might be relevant in more than just one area, we also have a backlinks feature. It lets you see where else this page has been referenced. You can also add a breadcrumb block anywhere within a page, and that will show the current location of the page by typing /breadcrumb. For example, to include a navigational footer on a long doc. Let's go ahead and build out some connections in the form of a brand style guide. We'll start by making a top-level page inside of marketing called Brand Style Guide. When we click into this page, we can see that the breadcrumb shows the path we took to get here: marketing, and then Brand Style Guide. Inside of this, we're going to build out our wiki. Rather than creating folders, Notion lets you organize content on the page using subheadings. Maybe we'll have one for written style, one for visual style, and one for archived brand resources. We could add callouts to explain each section too, if it makes sense. After we've added these, we can navigate through to see how the breadcrumbs change and how they might show up in the sidebar. If you joined an existing Notion workspace, think about how you might change or refactor your sidebar for better organization. And if you're the first member, pick those key areas for top-level pages, start adding some structure, and definitely keep watching this course. In this lesson, we'll show you how to share pages with individuals, groups, and the World Wide Web. We'll demonstrate this by sharing a one-on-one notes doc with a manager. Once you've created all your content, you're probably going to want to share it with others. As you may have noticed, pages are organized on the sidebar into 3 sections: team spaces, shared, and private. These are where all of your pages will be housed. Depending on your current workspace architecture, you may see just one or all of these sections. Generally speaking, we encourage people to keep their sidebar minimal. You should only join the team spaces that are relevant to you, and try to nest pages inside other pages as much as you can to keep related information together. We'll get more into team spaces in the next video. As you can see, there are only about 10 pages in my sidebar, but those don't represent every single page in my workspace. Other pages are nested inside of these, like so. In Notion, you can nest pages inside pages infinitely. For these more hidden nested pages that you want to be able to access easily, think a project plan you're actively working on, you can pin favorites to create a 4th section at the top. The best practice is to be selective with favorites. Favorite pages you use frequently, or favorite relevant project pages, and unfavorite them when the project wraps. If you're working in a workspace alone, you would just see one section and maybe favorites, since shared and private won't mean anything different to you. Workspace owners and membership admins can add members in settings here. You might not see this panel if you're just a workspace member. We'll get more into these role types later on, but keep in mind that members can join team spaces and access general workspace content. Usually, every team member is added to a Notion workspace as a member. In these cases, those workspace admin roles, along with their special privileges, are reserved for people managers or IT admins. Let's go ahead and learn how page sharing works and talk about some best practices when it comes to sharing. Starting with, when should you share with one person? When you share a doc with just one person, it will populate in the shared section of both of your sidebars. This is useful for brainstorms, private meetings, HR discussions, or generally speaking, anything you wouldn't be comfortable with your whole team seeing. To share with one person, use the Share tab. Add an email, choose an access level, optionally add a note, and click Invite. Similarly, when should you share with your team? Anything that you create in or move into the general Teamspace section can be accessed by all workspace members. Pages in other Teamspaces are shared to those corresponding Teamspace members. These sections are useful for promoting transparency and keeping everyone on the same page. Examples of things we commonly see in Teamspaces are meeting notes, documentation, project management, roadmaps, etc. Generally speaking, we suggest you default to creating pages in a relevant Teamspace, unless there's a reason not to do so. Finally, when should you share with the public? We see a lot of people create public Notion pages to function as makeshift websites. Things like startup job postings, resources for new employees, or even landing pages for special promotions can all be shared with Notion's public pages. When you share something with the public, you'll need to toggle Share to Web on. And there are more granular permission levels that you can set here, like search engine indexing and editing access based on your use case. For websites, you'll want to turn search engine indexing on and likely turn everything else off. You may also want to lock the page, which will prevent any accidental edits. Later on, we'll talk more about how admins can structure Teamspaces and change settings to prevent accidental sharing. But for now, let's think through a more common Notion use case, one-on-one notes. For any regularly scheduled meeting, it can be helpful to keep a log of discussion topics and action items. This helps keep both parties organized and gives you space to put random thoughts throughout the week to maximize time together. One-on-ones are also a good time for managers and direct reports to talk about personal or sensitive information, which is why they make a great case to learn about sharing. We probably wouldn't want to create a one-on-one notes log inside of a public area due to the nature of the content. For obvious reasons, it can't be private, so it needs to land in the shared section. To share a page with just a subset of your organization, you'll want to first create it as a private page. I'm going to pull in Notion's quick one-on-one meeting notes template here, just so we have something to work with, and populate it with some sample meetings. For this, we can call it Monica and Elia one-on-one. Once it's created, I can use the Share button to give Monica access to everything here. Then, both of us can add pages for weekly one-on-ones. If at any point a discussion from the one-on-one needed to be shared or escalated to another team member, myself or Monica could share just a single meeting's worth of notes, and it would show up in the shared section of the third party's sidebar. That's it for now. For this project, I'll be taking on the role of an office coordinator, and I'll apply what we've learned about the sidebar and sharing to build an office manual page for a physical office location. As usual, we'll focus on one specific example today, but the workflow can be applied to any sort of document publishing. Our goal here is to create a guide for Acme's global employees to use when visiting a new office, or for new employees who might be coming into the office for the first time. This document is everyone's source of truth for accessing information, Wi-Fi, transportation, and any fun office traditions that you might want to share. As usual, we'll start by creating a private page to get all of our notes down on paper first, without sharing with teammates. Use the plus sign to add a page to the private section of your sidebar, and create your draft. Since the focus of this lesson is on sharing and Teamspaces and not content creation, I'll pre-populate this with a bunch of information. Address, what to do before you visit, Wi-Fi info, some pictures, health and safety guidelines, snacks, and much more. Let's pretend that this is our rough draft. Before publishing broadly, I would probably want to share with a collaborator, like my manager, to request specific feedback. When I do that, I can also add a note to explain why I'm sharing and decide what level of access to give them. If you want them to be able to share the page, grant full access. Otherwise, you can decide between giving them edit access or comment-only access. For this type of document, we typically suggest adding a quick note and giving full access, since it isn't super sensitive content. For something that requires more discretion, like the 360 review SOP that we created in another lesson, it might be best to default to can edit access and upgrade only when needed. Once I hit share, I see the page move from the private section of my sidebar to the shared section. Whoever I shared it with will see the page appear here as well, and they'll also get a notification that I shared it with them. Note that notifications are only sent if you share a page directly with an individual, not when you add a group or change workspace access. Now that it's here, I can pin it to keep it visible in my shared space, or add it as a favorite using the star in the upper right-hand corner to keep it top of mind. My collaborators will be able to add comments, and we can use the page comment feature to add general feedback and decide when the page is ready to be published to everyone. Once all of my reviews of this page are done, I'll share it to the whole company using the Move To action and put it into the appropriate team space. In this case, this doc belongs in the general team space, filed alongside other Office manuals. The permissions for this will be based on the Teamspace permissions, so anyone who is a Teamspace owner will have full access, and Teamspace members will be able to view the page. I could talk to the Teamspace owners if I needed to change that, or I could change the permissions on this page specifically by just modifying the level of access from this Share menu. It's important to note here that I moved this page instead of sharing it with all members of the workspace, because I wanted it to live in the general team space, not in the shared section of each workspace member's sidebar. Shared sections can get messy quickly, so we encourage people to put all pages in relevant team spaces as soon as it makes sense. Another neat thing that we can do here, if you want to be able to share the page with new hires before they've joined, or with potential candidates if they're coming into the office for an on-site, is toggle Share to Web on. This generates a public link that you can share with those folks. You can even make it so that the link expires after 24 hours if this is information that you don't want to be broadly available. Again, just make sure to adjust the settings for SEO and template duplication accordingly. That's it for now.
In this video, we're going to talk about a new block type, databases. Databases are one of the most powerful Notion features and will take your Notion game to the next level. In this video, we'll cover how to create databases and add properties by building out a content calendar. Until this point, we've just been working with basic blocks and media. So let's take a look at an example database. At first glance, a database in Notion might look like something you've probably seen before, a spreadsheet. However, Notion databases are much more powerful than your typical two-dimensional spreadsheet. Over the next couple of videos, we'll take a tour of databases in Notion and explore that power. Starting with the name property. This property is an identifier for each database entry. It's pretty similar to a page title and describes what you expect to find in that row. So in our example, every row is a person that works at Acme Inc., a pretty natural identifier. One pro tip about the name property: it is the only property in a database that Notion requires you to have. Others can be deleted or their type modified. This will be good to know as you start to build your own databases. After each name, we see columns with descriptions of the person. These columns are also called properties. You'll hear me use the terms interchangeably. Here you can see a number of different properties that describe the person, like their title, team, manager, LinkedIn profile, email, and more. You might also notice that these columns look richer than your traditional spreadsheet, with formatting, color, and interactivity. Unlike a spreadsheet, Notion databases require each column to have a type, literally a data type, which you can sort of think of like block types. For example, this name column is a special name type. The team and location columns are tags. The start date is a date. and the LinkedIn profile is a URL. This means that they can be uniquely formatted and displayed in different layouts, which we'll get into soon. The last thing that I want to show here is that each row in a database actually opens up to its own page. Literally everything that we've learned up to this point can be used inside of a database. Moving on from the tour, let's go ahead and create our own database in Notion. We'll build out the framework of a content calendar for a marketing team. Just like any other block type in Notion, a database can be added with the / command or the + sign. You may notice a couple of things here. Databases are a category rather than a block type. Instead, you'll see several types of view layouts for databases. For now, we'll stay focused on the familiar table layout. You'll also notice that unlike other block types, databases can exist inline on a page, or open up to their own page. For now, we'll build an inline database in this page, which allows us to add additional context around it if we so choose. After adding our inline table, we'll give it a name, like upcoming blog posts. Then we can go ahead and start adding entries to the database. Maybe there's a blog post about our API, one about our latest funding round, and a customer story. To add more entries, we can use this New button. So let's go ahead and add cheers to our first 1 million users. Tables come with a default select property called tag, which we can delete or rename. In this case, we might want to use tags to identify blog posts by type: engineering, thought leadership, general marketing. Once a tag is used once, it can be reused to reference another item in the database. We can add any other kind of property by clicking this + sign. Again, remember that we need to designate the type of property here. If we want to identify the blog post author, it would be helpful to add a person property. If we want to add a publish date, a date property, and so on. Databases unlock an entirely new world of Notion usage and power the creation of some incredibly complex tools built on Notion. This is just the beginning. In this video, we will learn how to create views on databases and add views to an existing database. In the last video, we used a database in table layout. But one of the coolest things about databases in Notion is that the same underlying data can power countless different layouts. This is what really sold me on Notion as a tool. I have a database for all of our social media posts, and there's no need to create a separate calendar. I can just create a new view. There are 6 view layouts in Notion: tables, lists, calendars, timelines, galleries, and boards, each of which is best suited for a different use case. What's consistent across all of these layouts, though, is the ability to sort and filter database entries, as well as hide and show different properties. Let's explore some of these powerful layouts. The table layout in our people database is the default, and great for adding new entries quickly. It's also a good place to see all of the database properties at once. Generally speaking, tables are great for getting a bird's eye view of all of the content in your database, which makes them ideal for admin work like cleaning up a database or editing a bunch of properties. The list layout is simple, sleek, and minimal. You can use it for presenting a collection of documents or notes, or keeping track of your own to-dos. This view looks and works best when you only need to see a few key properties. Calendars and timelines are best suited for workflows that involve date ranges or multiple consecutive steps. The calendar layout displays database pages as cards on a month-by-month calendar. This is what I use for our social media post planning. The timeline layout is better for things like project or launch planning. It has an infinitely scrolling horizontal structure and more flexible timeframes. You can choose to display your tasks on an hourly, daily, monthly, or even quarterly basis. The gallery layout is the most visual of the 6. It gives you a preview into the content of a database page or the page cover. They're great for displaying images in an organized way or for seeing additional detail within database entries. Boards are great for organizing content by category. You'll be able to group your database pages in columns and even add subgroups. In our people database, we might use a board layout to group everyone by office location. But they're also great for things like task management, since you can group your tasks by status. Each layout has its own customization options tucked away in the three-dot menu on the right-hand side of the view. Here, you'll be able to customize the layout options, add grouping, show and hide properties, filter and sort your data, and so much more. The practical applications to layouts are endless. Let's say we want a calendar showing employees' start date. In the case of our people database, rather than having to export data, then finagle dates in a spreadsheet, and then format it as a calendar in another app, we can simply take the data we already have and create another view. So let's consider our blog post database again and create some new views, starting with a calendar to display published dates. With an existing database, you can create a view using the Add View button across the top. Then simply give your view a name and select one of these layouts to get started. Here, we'll go for a calendar layout. Notion is pretty smart when it comes to configuring these views. In this case, it could tell that published date was the only date property, and probably what we wanted to display on the calendar. In cases where you want to change the way data is displayed in a view, you can use the Properties menu in the upper right-hand corner. If we wanted to view our blog posts by author, we might create a board view like so. Find that Add View option, and then select Board as the layout. Boards, like other views, can be organized by any property, which we can change using the Options menu on the top right. This menu gives me lots of options, like the ability to hide and display properties, as well as customize layout options. In a board layout, I can also change the card size or add background colors to my columns. Back in the Options menu, I might want to add a subgroup, for example, to view posts by author and status. Databases can get quite complex with filters, formulas, rollups, relations, and more. This is all we're going to cover for now, but I encourage you to keep experimenting to see what you can build with databases. One of the best and easiest ways to organize your Notion workspace is with databases. So let's build a meeting notes database together. Without databases, it's possible to amass huge collections of individual pages of similar types, and you lose out on the ability to tag, sort, and filter them. Using a database for meeting notes is a great way to keep everything in one place and organize all of it. Properties help you identify meeting date, location, host, and more. So it becomes really easy to sort and filter information to find just what you need. We suggest that whenever possible, your entire company or department shares the same meeting notes database. You can utilize views with filters whenever you need to see a smaller subsection of notes, but this way you can also get a high-level overview without having to combine multiple databases. This is actually how we run our internal note system at Notion, and it works great. To build out this database, let's first create a new page in the General Team space. Putting it in the General Team space ensures that everyone will have access to it. Individual users and teams will be able to pull this data into their own team spaces and pages, which helps to increase transparency and prevent information silos. Just a heads up, in this example, we're going to be focused more on the database design and build than the actual content within. We'll start with giving our database a title and an icon. Let's call it Meeting Notes and add a writing hand emoji. If I click on this row, it'll open up a blank page that I can edit, just like how we've been editing all other pages in Notion. That's what makes it useful for storing our meeting note content. The general idea here is that each horizontal row will be a meeting. Each vertical column will categorize that meeting and its different properties, the date of the meeting, the team members involved, and more. I'll add some fictitious meetings to work with: Engineering Weekly, All Hands, and Design Sync. Next up, we'll need to decide what properties we want to add. These will be available to categorize each meeting within the company, and are how we'll be able to sort, filter, group, and otherwise organize our meeting notes. You'll notice that by default, there is a multi-select property called Tags. We can use this to add any category. For example, what teams had the meeting. So let's rename the property from tags to teams. We can then add one or multiple teams here, like engineering, design, marketing, and remove the ones we don't need. When it comes to adding other properties, we'll use this plus sign. Here, we'll give the new property a type and decide its name. One important thing to classify about a meeting is when it took place. So we can add a property, select the type date, and name it date. We'll also want to know who attended these meetings, so we can follow the same process to add a person property with the name attendees. Finally, it might be helpful to add a multi-select type property to distinguish between different kinds of meetings, like all hands, daily stand-ups, or weekly syncs. As your company grows and records more and more meetings in Notion, this can become a really fantastic running record for remembering every decision and conversation that's happened over the years.
In this lesson, we'll consider how to use data sources and database templates across your workspace to stay more connected to your team. Every time you create a new database or view, you'll be given the option to select an existing data source from your workspace. We recommend using just a few core databases for day-to-day operations of your work and life, rather than a whole bunch of smaller databases. Using properties to differentiate content, this helps you stay more organized at scale. For teams, meeting notes, tasks, projects, and docs tend to be a good place to start. Then, when you want to add a reference or add that information somewhere else in your workspace, you simply make a new view of the existing database. Everything pulls from the same underlying information, so an update in one location persists wherever you view that information. Another advantage to reusing data sources is that you can use database templates to softly enforce healthy ways of working. Most databases contain the same types of pages created over and over again. Think of weekly meeting notes, bug reports, or design specs. To make this easy, database templates let you define and replicate certain page structures with just one click. Let's zoom into the example of docs. With a traditional word processor, you're always starting with a blank document and creating structure as you go. Typically, this means that no two documents look or feel the same. When you go and create a new document in a database in Notion, you're prompted to choose from a set of templates set up by your administrators or your peers. You can set these up to yourself too, but we'll get to that later. In this data source, you might have a product requirement doc, or a PRD, used by engineers, a campaign proposal for marketers, and a standard operating procedure for HR and people functions. These can be configured to make sure that the necessary information is always there, taking some of the guesswork away from document creators. Templates, combined with link views, help your org feel structured and streamlined. You don't have to go back to look at this massive database, ever, unless you want to. You just create your view in context of whatever project you're working on, click the relevant template, and get down to business. Let's go ahead and try that together. Your team uses a meeting notes table to keep track of all company meetings, but there might be dozens, if not hundreds of entries every day. Let's just say you're working on a big cross-functional project and want to surface just meetings tagged with your project name. In this case, you'll want to add a new database, and instead of clicking New Data Source, like we've done in past lessons, you'll select Meeting Notes, and then create your view like usual. For this dark mode launch page, we'll want to add a filter to only show notes with the appropriate tag. Anyone with access to your project page and the original database can see this view, and change the view without affecting the original database. But any changes you make to the data itself, that is properties or pages inside the database, will change for everyone, everywhere that this data exists. So for example, we can add a new meeting here, fill it out with all the relevant information, and see that the meeting has been captured in our company-wide database, alongside other meetings. What's more, as you may have noticed, when we added a meeting note page from this view, it gets automatically populated with those properties it's filtered on. You can really go nuts here and combine multiple data sources within one database block, so we might have meeting notes about the project in one tab and docs in another. You can add these tabs using the exact same process as the original database view. Just click New View, select your data source, add your filters, and voila. If your organization is already using Notion, there might be tons of databases that exist. As a contributor, you could consider setting up a personal page with a view of this data for all documents tagged with your team or that were originally created by you. This helps keep your focus on what matters while maintaining organization across your company. In this lesson, we'll explore ways that teams have implemented Notion at scale and discern key principles for an organized workspace. Without a little pruning, no matter how beautiful the flowers, every garden can become overgrown. Notion administrators and members alike can tend to the sidebar to keep the workspace clean and beautiful for everyone. You wouldn't let your physical office space stay littered with trash, so you shouldn't let your Notion space get out of hand either. In our Intro to Sidebar video, we discuss how individual team members can curate their view of the workspace by joining relevant team spaces, sharing pages, and creating a personal dashboard. If you're considering how to create this level of organization at your company, this lesson is for you. You can create team spaces for each major function at your company for individuals to browse and join. At Notion, we have a general team space and a team space for each big team: marketing, people, product, sales and success, legal, finance, and security. Within each team space, sub-teams have their own home pages that exist as top-level pages in the sidebar. These top-level pages are important because they allow folks to browse and find content more easily. And unlike a traditional folder and file structure, you can add text alongside pages to further help your team know where to go. Companies should align on 3 to 5 key databases, like meeting notes, docs, and tasks, to run most of their day-to-day work. We'll talk a lot about the power of databases in these lessons, and think you'll come to agree that they're very important to a clean and organized workspace. Having a few key databases full of rich properties like tags and other metadata can help to keep information organized. Finally, organized workspaces keep all important resources like key databases and docs in a general team space. I already mentioned Notion's general team space, and every workspace is required to have one default team space, but what should be kept here? Anything a new team member would need, regardless of their spot in the company: mission, vision, and values, benefits information, a new hire manual, or office information. Let's look at 2 examples of Notion workspaces and compare and contrast. There isn't necessarily a wrong way to organize your workspace, but keeping a few best practices in mind will help your team feel calm and cozy, whether they're opening Notion for the first time or the 500th time. Our first example is one with too many top-level pages. Everything is a top-level page with no rationale or consideration of hierarchy. This is one of the #1 mistakes we see large teams making, and there's a few ways to prevent it. For starters, if you're on an enterprise plan workspace, team space owners can prevent members from editing top-level sections of the sidebar. You can also consider creating a top-level page for lost pages, to be tidied, pages that need a home, or whatever works best for you and your team. Even the most organized people have a junk drawer somewhere in their home. You can also take time to educate peers on Notion's nested pages. It's not entirely uncommon for people to create top-level pages without realizing what they've done or that anyone in their team space can see it. If you're using Notion in daily operations, consider adding some of these best practices to your new hire onboarding. You'll notice a few other things here that just don't feel great. Lack of consistent iconography use, pages that serve competing purposes like docs versus engineering docs, poor use of databases, and way too many shared pages. While none of these are hugely significant, they might make Notion less enjoyable to use. By contrast, let's look at a more polished space. This workspace has team spaces for different functional areas within the company. In the general team space, they've neatly laid out the company's 5 key databases and how to use each one. Within the product and engineering team space, headings help direct a reader's attention to the right place, and each subteam has their own homepage that they've customized to suit their needs. To a new hire, this workspace is far more welcoming and will help everyone settle into their working day quickly and without friction. To summarize the best practices learned here today, 1, be intentional about how you use team spaces. 2, give each subteam their own homepage. 3, keep company-wide information in the general team space. And 4, add flair, and foster community with custom icons, cover images, and more. Go ahead and head back to your Notion space and consider any structure that you'd like to create to keep your team tidier. When lots of people are using the same database, it can be hard for you to manage and share information with your team. For the purposes of this project, we'll put ourselves in the shoes of a customer success leader who wants a more customized home for their team's content. To accomplish this, we'll create a linked view of the company-wide docs table within the customer success homepage. Recall that companies should align on the key databases they need to run most of their day-to-day work. Usually meeting notes, docs, wiki, and tasks do the trick. These general resources live in the general team space, like in the case of Acme Inc., where we can browse this docs database. The views here are helpful, but they mostly apply to the whole company, in review, created by me, etc. They don't include team-specific views, and that's probably a good thing to prevent clutter. So as a team leader, what should you do to support your team in finding the information that's relevant to them? Let's navigate to the Sales and Success team space and find the Customer Success homepage. This is where we'll work today. To build our database, we simply start typing /list and then select Docs as our data source. From here, we're prompted to choose an existing view or create our own. Since we know that a team-specific view doesn't exist at the source, we can go ahead and start making our own. The rest is pretty straightforward. We'll just filter by team and add customer success, then add a sort by most recently edited so that things show up in the order of when they were last accessed, and voila. A dynamic hub for your customer success team that is still linked to the original database to prevent information silos, but makes it easier for teammates to stay focused. Remember that adding a new doc here will automatically apply the customer success tag too, so nothing will get lost. What's more, you can use the existing templates from the docs database to create docs in your own space. Because this database is linked, changes to things like filters and sorts won't appear on the original database. But changes to content, like adding rows, editing pages, or adding or removing properties, will. It also means that permissions for this database will be inherited from whatever is set up in the general team space. Thanks so much for joining us. That's all for now.